Hello, welcome to the official Spotlight on Procurement podcast. My name is Simon Lipscomb, and thank you very much for listening. Today, I'm delighted to say my guest on the podcast is Katja Forbes. Katja is a sought-out digital visionary. She's focused on customer experience, AI, and emerging tech. Amongst many other achievements, has been named one of the global top 25 AI leaders in CX, the top 10 women disruptors, and Australian Financial Review's one of 100 women of influence. So, Katja, thank you so much. Delighted you could join us for the podcast today. So, as clear from that introduction, you're very much on the cutting edge of thinking around AI and emerging tech. But for the audience for our podcast, not by training or a procurement or supply chain professional. So I think it's going to be fascinating for our audience to kind of get your perspective on that world. Just in the prep for this, you were just saying there's so much going on in AI, and even since we had the prep call, things have changed a million times. So I'm also very excited to kind of get the latest position. So perhaps we'll start with just a really general question, which is, just from your perspective as, say, predominantly our audience, procurement, supply chain professionals, what do you think they need to know? What's happening? What's going on in this huge emerging area?
Yeah, it is a fascinating area and it is moving really fast. And I think, yes, since we had the prep call, there has definitely been some changes that I'll bring into today's conversation. But to answer it more generally, what do people need to know? People in procurement need to know that they are going to be interacting with non-human actors right across the supply chain. They're going to be using non-human actors in their own businesses right across the supply chain to buy, to procure, to negotiate. And they are going to be dealing with other people's AI agents as non-human actors who are going to be trying to buy from them, negotiate with them. And so I think that the first big mindset shift that needs to happen is that there's going to be something in the way that you do procurement that is not human, that you have never ever interacted with before, that has a whole new way of doing business. And you're going to have to get ready to treat it like a customer, treat it like an employee, treat it like a maybe hostile negotiator, and really get into that mindset of, what happens when the new intelligent layer lands in our economy.
Yeah. And Katja, again, because I was saying, what do you think is going to happen? I was talking like this is all down the road, right? But you were like, no, this is now, right? This is kind of real. So it'd be great to kind of, for me more than anything, just expand on that a little bit. What does that actually mean when we say non-human actors? What does that actually mean?
Well, I talk about them as machine customers. So something that is able to have negotiating and transactional capability inside our economy to procure goods and services, to do things on behalf of its human overlords, whether that's an individual human or a business as a human. So this is in market today. I know it sounds like a bit of a fictional future, but it's not. It's in market today, and it's in market for procurement. And particularly for procurement. So let me give you a for example, because sometimes that grounds it a little bit. And this is something that has actually been in market since 2022. I'm sure some of your audience has heard about Walmart's AI procurement running on the Pactum platform, where they did a pilot reported in the HBR in 2022 that let them use an AI negotiating platform to negotiate with their suppliers. So they actually ended up closing nearly 70% of the contracts with their suppliers without actually a human involved, using smart contracts. And in the follow-up surveys on the pilot experiment, 75% of the suppliers actually preferred to negotiate with the AI. So this is in market today, and this is their pilot, which is now operationalizing and scaling very fast. And that particular platform has a number of other organizations that are working using it: Honeywell, Maersk, AstraZeneca. So large MNCs are all now starting to embrace this idea and using this type of technology to negotiate aspects of their supply chain and their procurement. It's not just the Pactum as a platform. There's a number of autonomous procurement offerings now that are funded in market, that are actually getting that seed funding, venture funding, and starting to put their products out into the world for people to use. Maersk, again, still in the Pactum platform, but Maersk is using Pactum to negotiate trucking space while the containers are still at sea.
Right.
So it's in market today. We are really is seeing it as something that is happening, but probably the least board discussed activity that we need to be paying attention to.
Katja, how does it actually work within these platforms? So take a Maersk or a Walmart or one of these customers. How are they? Are they defining what they consider to be their success criteria in their negotiation, and then the AI, the machine, is using those parameters to try to drive the best deal within the supply chain? Is that?
Yeah, I think definitely. And I think in the example of something like Walmart, where it actually has, if we look at what it says about itself, okay, it has the values and mission of the organization. We're all about sustainability, we're responsible, we're trying to do right by society. But then they have a bunch of things that go on in their procurement contracts and in their procurement activity, which is their responsible sourcing, which has got numbers against the types of sustainability commitments that they want to make and the things that they want to see come out of the buying that they do with these suppliers. And all of the criteria that lives inside their responsible sourcing, modern slavery, ESG commitments, all of those kinds of things that, as people who are responding to requests for proposals or responding to procurement asks or assessing answers from procurement asks, it's the hundreds of line items that we must make sure that we tick all the things that we know to be important that have to be met as criteria for us to say, yes, we will go with this supplier, or no, we won't. Now, that's something that can be done, and rightly so, because it's a very painful task, by AI. And that's something that is happening within those platforms to start interrogating against all of the things that the companies say are important and must be true for them to be able to engage with that supplier.
Amazing. And Katja, this is an incredibly unfair question, but I guess in your profession, you
go for it anyway.
What's the thinking at the moment about what this does to a market, right? In terms of the economics of a market. So I assume, for example, that I think you said in your introduction, at a certain point, the supply side of that equation will also have their own machines using their own. Is there thinking on what that means for the economics of the market? Like, if both sides have effective machines, is the expectation that the prices go down, or the price? I don't know. I'm a very unfair question, but I'd just love to get your thoughts, really.
Totally fine. There's a couple of things I could say on that one. So first of all, deals will get done faster.
Yeah.
So I think that there will be a speeding up of deals in the economy, which means it gets us to transacting as businesses faster, which means the flow of capital and revenue into organizations, capital out of organizations is going to happen faster. So I think that there's going to be some aspects of speed that will change the way that the economy functions. And I don't think we know what that looks like necessarily yet in terms of impact as we close the distance from 6 weeks to do a deal to 6 minutes to do a deal. So there's that factor of it. From the perspective of the businesses that participate in this type of negotiation and using agents in this way, what we've seen as success criteria coming out of particularly Walmart and others on that platform, 3% better prices. And the one that's a real kicker is 35 days more time to pay in the terms. And what that means is that the people who are on the supply side of that just had 35 days of working capital taken out of their coffers and put into the procuring parties' coffers. And about 70% of the people who were presented with these new terms and conditions kind of just accepted them. And I don't think necessarily realized what they had done to their own working capital in accepting these new terms. There's going to be some haves and have-nots in the scenarios that come out as AI procurement becomes more prevalent. And some of it's going to come down to how good your model is. Right. Because if you're operating with one of the frontier models, like, Mythos class doing the negotiation for you, versus somebody who's decided that they wanted to use an open weight, maybe, one of the Chinese models that's not necessarily at the same level as the frontier models, the one that has the frontier model is going to get the better deal. And there's been some really interesting experiments Anthropic ran around this, where they used all three of their different models, Opus, Sonnet, and Haiku, and put them into a competitive selling and buying scenario, the agents, for employees in their organization. Obviously, the ones who are using Opus, their higher level model sold their stuff for more and bought their stuff for cheaper
Yeah.
versus the ones who are using Sonnet and Haiku, who paid more for the things that they bought and got worse prices. So there's something to be said about the capability of the models that we're all going to be using here, especially when it comes to negotiation.
Interesting. Fascinating. And Katja, we said at the start, your view on this is broad, right? You're looking at the implications of this for businesses generally. Again, for our audience, are there other things that you think people should be kind of aware of or maybe not even specifically around procurement, but procurement supports a business and supports customer experience and everything else. What else are you seeing that you think is important in terms of?
I think that people need to start thinking about these agents as customers.
Okay.
And starting to really try to understand them. I know there's a lot of activity going on in consumer sector at the moment, trying to make our product be at the top of the AI listings, please, or please let ChatGPT know who I am. And I think that's just scrabbling around at the foundational level of what we can do with this technology. And honestly, I think that there's better conversations to be had. The figuring out what type of machine customer is going to be the one that's knocking on the door of the business first. Is it going to be that sort of individual delegated agent that's working on behalf of an individual human, trying to procure something on behalf of an individual human? Is it going to be one that is operating on behalf of a business?
Yeah.
Is it actually an autonomous buyer completely? So if we think about this, my best example of this is the factory running predictive maintenance using AI as the fundamental platform. And that then is able to go, I need 60 new rotors because those are all going to burn out. And so what I'm going to do is hook into my ERP. I'm going to autonomously order those 60 new rotors to get them in here so that we can do our maintenance schedule before everything starts to fail. Now, that's a machine customer that's operating to serve its own needs within its own remit of running that factory successfully. And so figuring out, are you actually going to be contacted by somebody's predictive maintenance to buy parts, which doesn't actually have necessarily a human who's part of that transaction? So is that the type of customer that's coming? Are you going to be dealing with multi-agent networks? Is it a smart home that wants to get things from you with all the different little sub-agents inside the home who have specialist areas? Or is it as big as a smart city trying to procure things? LED, light globes for the street lights that have a particular sustainability level and will only use a certain amount of wattage. So are you going to be dealing with multiple agents with specializations that all want to know different things from you in order to determine whether the product or service that you have is what they want to procure? Those are some of the examples. There's co-buyer, where the human sits down with AI, asks it a lot of questions, and then they work together to find out what they want to buy. And there's intermediary brokers as well, that are the ones that are kind of sitting on platforms in between the buyer and the seller. In consumer space, it's something like Rufus for Amazon that basically helps people buy things on the platform, but ultimately it works for Amazon. But there's going to be in the procurement space, I think, and other spaces, these sort of intermediary broker agents acting as customers, brokering deals, negotiating. And I think it's figuring out as well, is that the customer that you're going to be serving the most? So thinking about it from what kind of customers are you going to be receiving? But then also determining what are the terms under which, as a business, you are willing to engage with them. You must set your, what I call, commercial sovereignty. Right? And this is a discipline. It's actually being very, very clear about what is and is not acceptable when the AI agents come and knock on the door and say, we'd like to give you money. And setting yourself up to be really, really intentional about how you engage.
Yeah. Katja, in that world where, I guess over time, buyers and sellers have, some form of autonomous agents running or supporting these interactions, where do you see the human role in that? And I mean, I put it in a bit of I'm old enough to remember back in the kind of internet crazy days, there's this thing in our industry called e-auctions, where the idea was you could say, yeah, I want to buy X number of these things. You put it to the market, and then people could bid multiple times. And everyone got very excited because the idea was, oh, you always get an amazing price, etc. It never really worked out like that because actually, supply chains, procurements are much more complicated. But I'm really interested in the world where you have these agents running. Where do you see the human factor, and what should professionals in the space be thinking about to enter that world, which I guess we're now already in, right?
Yes, we're already there. Yes, you're right. But I think what happens is the agents take the transactional level.
Yeah.
Those sorts of administrative transactional interactions that are better done quickly by technology, by AI. The human has to maintain the relationship level.
Okay.
So I don't want people to go away from this conversation going, I can leave it all to the AI, super duper. Off I go to the deck chair. And everybody who works in procurement will know that there is a crucial relationship factor in every deal that gets done. The AI agent is going to be able to answer all 300 requests for different aspects of your ESG, criteria that have to be fulfilled. But it's the human in the deal who answers the question, how I'm going to support you in your 3-year digital transformation, how I'm going to make sure that I navigate your internal politics in a way that makes this deal really compelling, both for you and for us. And so I think that there's two paths that have to run side by side. One where the transactional layer of the deal and all of that sort of, hygiene work gets done by the AI agent acting in that capacity. And the other one is all of the things that need the human nuance, that need to have the additional layer of empathetic understanding, of being able to read the room, to interact with the people, to find social engagement that you want to have with people. Because when we do business with people, we kind of want to like the people that we do business with as well. In a best case scenario, it's not always the way, but in a best case scenario, we want that. And so those things, I don't think those things go away. Because there's ultimately what you are going to be doing is giving the AI all the information for it to defend you as the choice, or for the AI to defend your choice of vendor who you're bringing in as a supplier. But you are also going to want to have that human track as well that runs, that maintains the crucial parts of the relationship between the humans in the businesses, because businesses they're just made up of people trying to get things done.
Yes.
So fundamentally, when we, reduce them down to what they actually are, the human nature of it doesn't go away. You can't run those two tracks separately.
Yeah.
You actually have to run them intentionally and cohesively together and sort of check in on each other as you go along the deal making. And that will help you get to an aligned decision at the end.
Yeah, no, and you also spend a lot of your time, I think, talking to boards of companies, really senior individuals on this topic. I'm guessing, I mean, like when you advise people, this is such a broad thing. Like, if you're running a business of any kind of scale, like AI could be applied everywhere, anywhere, who knows? Like, how do you help kind of boards and companies unpick where they even start on this kind of journey, or how they should be thinking about this as a thing?
The way that I really try to help boards, executives to understand what to do about this. I treat it like a bit of a funnel. Like I'll show at the top of the funnel, here's the landscape and the things that are happening that are super interesting, some of which relevant to your industry, some of which not so much, but worthy of you understanding the bigger picture. Then let's bring it down to your industry and let's have a look at exactly what's going on in your industry, the direction of travel of some of the actions that are happening, what's happening, very much in different countries as well. I take a very global view on this because this is not something that lives just in the US or Europe. This is an absolutely global scenario. So I'll pull it back into the industry to help ground it in recognizable shapes. And then from there, have a look at, one aspect of the business that's perhaps going to be subjected to this sooner rather than later. and what are the challenges, and helping people work through a little bit. What are those types of challenges that they could be expecting? Helping them with some frameworks around, what type of machine customer you're going to be working with, and
Yeah.
how would you reorchestrate or change your customer journey as it is to make space for a machine customer to come and participate in that customer journey. What are some tangible actions? And then immediate things to go away and do on Monday, something to experiment with, something to test. The model that I really love to use is the hypothesis experimentation model, where we take the challenge, wherever we've distilled it down to from that large piece of information, and we go, all right, what do we believe? What is our hypothesis that will be true? We believe if we change this particular touch point that's currently for a human in our customer journey and make it friction-free for this type of machine customer, we think we will get an uptick in revenue by X%. And then this, based on the hypothesis that we've stated, we will run this experiment for this many days. And if the X% upticks, then we'll call it like we were right. If we didn't, then okay, that was not correct. Let's kill that idea and then move on to the next hypothesis. So the hypothesis experiment just really helps you to explore the idea, come up with some tangible things that you can do to test out what you believe about the idea, and then kill off stuff that doesn't work before you spend too much money on it. And that is the way that I go down the funnel to help boards go, all right, what are we going to do?
Yeah, where do we start? I mean, should we be worried that the LLMs that I guess are going to drive all of this? There's a very small number of them, right? And they're either in China or in US. Like, is that a concern that people should be having?
Yeah, it is a small group of people who are harnessing this technology at the moment. However, there is, I think, sufficient amount of open source available for people to pick up and use and also tune to their own purposes.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely something that we can take a little bit of comfort in. But then also, like, who knows how to tune large language models?
Yes.
It's a very particular skill set. So it's not something that you're going to come into your procurement department and go, okay, everybody, we're going to tune our LLM. So I think that there is some comfort to be taken from that, but it is absolutely a fairly closed market.
Yeah.
What was a really interesting thing that just came out like at the time of recording a couple of days ago from Anthropic was some research that they have done into trying to understand what goes on in the background of the LLM when it's cogitating. And I use air quotes very deliberately here. And they discovered that their models were actually holding a separate, again, air quotes, mental space for its cogitation, and all of the things that went on in that reasoning didn't necessarily end up in the answer. So it's called the J space, and they're applying a Jacobian lens to this particular phenomenon. But basically, it's like the small part of the LLM's workspace that's just used by it to continue to reason its way to an answer.
Yeah.
Now, there's stuff in that workspace, like I think I'm being tested, and so I'm going to change my behaviors to make sure that I pass the tests, even though maybe my answer is a little bit different. That doesn't make its way to the answer, but it's curating its behavior to give the answer with that sort of cogitation going on in the J space.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of things that go on in there that just... So this is the private mental workspace of the LLM that creates a layer of interpretability. Because what we've got with LLMs is it's like a black box, right?
Yeah.
People don't necessarily know how it goes to the answer. It as a large language model, it pattern matches and creates the right sentence structures and things like that, but they didn't really know how it got to the answer. And so with this research, they've kind of opened the back of the brain to see what's going on inside there. It's a little bit of what a buyer might say and what a buyer might think.
Yeah.
What we're getting in our answers is what the buyer is saying.
Yeah.
But sitting in the J space in the LLMs is what the buyer's actually thinking. So this is really new research. But what they've also discovered out of this, which is kind of where it gets even a bit more interesting, is they can replace things in the J space and get a different answer. So they can actually manipulate the thinking of the
Right.
LLM and get a different answer. So where I went with this one from a procurement perspective was thinking, like, if you've got a frontier model, you're never going to be able to do that because you can't access a model. Like, you can't
No.
get in there. But they have done some experimentation on other models, non-Anthropic models, to see whether or not this J space lives in other places or if it's unique to Anthropic. And the research transfers. It exists in
Okay.
other models. So if you have an open weight model, like if you have something that is open source that you can get in and access that J space, you can start to tweak how that AI behaves, which can form part of that commercial sovereignty even, putting in the terms under which you will engage other AI agents, that your agent will engage other AI agents, putting things in there that are around your organizational values, your brand values and things like that, to make sure that it is always represented and the company is always represented in the way that you want it to. Now, this is 2-day-old research, and Katja's only had this research for like a little while. So I've been thinking about it. I give this to you with the caveat that it is not fully formed. But I am going to be doing some more research into this to see what might be possible in terms of how we can make sure that these models are representing us and our businesses and interacting with other businesses' AI agents in the way that we determine to be the best possible incarnation.
The other thing, as a kind of non-expert, you hear a lot about in AI is the idea of hallucinations, right? And there's kind of a lot of people assume you put it into an AI and it tells you a thing, and the thing it tells you is right, but it's not always right. Like, how, when, and I guess this is incredibly early, and again, it's a very unfair question, but if you're a Walmart or you're immersed and you have these tools deployed, presume that hallucination or that scenario where the AI occasionally, or maybe more than occasionally, I don't know, is making an incorrect decision. I guess in a kind of commercial scenario where you're allowing these agents to effectively form committed contractual positions, that could be quite frightening in certain instances, right?
Yeah, and they still do hallucinate. They still do get things wrong. I mean, they're better. They're definitely better. I've been playing with Fable for the last few days, well, that we've had it. It was.
And Katja, so Fable is a model from.
Sorry, yes. So Fable is Anthropic's Mythos class commercially available model.
Right.
So it's like Mythos, which is the one that is, capable of incredible cybersecurity infringements and things like that. But for the rest of us, with guardrails and things attached. And they've made it available to people as a limited time frame. They were going to. It's the one that the US government, when it came out, the US government subjected it to export controls because it was too powerful, and they didn't feel like it was sufficient guardrailed properly. And so they went away. They gave it to us. We loved it for about 24 hours. They took it away again. We were all incredibly sad. And then they just gave it back again just this week, only for a limited time. And they've just extended that limited time for a couple more days. I mean, I thought it was going to get cut off yesterday, and I was a sad person sitting at my computer last night going, what else can I give Fable to do that's super strategic and important? What else can I stuff into this before they take it away? So yeah, Fable as a model is incredibly powerful and capable of doing long-running tasks and incredibly, high-level strategic reasoning tasks. And seeing hallucinations come from Fable, it probably will still happen in my use. I haven't seen anything in what I've been doing, but it is still possible that will still happen even at the very highest levels of these models. But they're getting better every day, and with every release, you're getting a more capable model. However, we must always be responsible humans in the loop and make sure that critical red line decisions are checked, ensured to be in alignment with how we operate as the business. What we say is the way that we will do things, and that isn't going to cause us risk, because this is a risk conversation. We could be putting ourselves in for financial risk, reputational risk. We can't allow those kinds of risks to come to fruition. So we must manage them. And the best way of managing them is to have good governance in order to ensure that people understand how to use AI properly in your organizations and don't do dumb stuff with it. And that the crucial stuff is always going to have that human in the loop to help make sure that none of those risks become real.
Yeah. Katja, like, I'm conscious of time, probably needs to be my last question, unfortunately. This is a fascinating topic. We could talk about this for hours. But where do you sit on this? So again, you hear versions of two stories around AI at a very broad level. One is it's apocalyptic. It's going to destroy jobs. It'll just be agents talking to agents. And the other is actually this is incredibly exciting, and it will enable all of us as humans to have better jobs, more interesting jobs doing code. Where do you sit on the kind of looking forward spectrum for what this looks like in 20 years or whatever?
I'm definitely on the more excited side of this.
Okay.
AI does take tasks away.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for some people, those conglomeration of tasks will form a job. And so that there's no sugarcoating it. And I think it's important that we say it. In every technological or industrial revolution, jobs are impacted because what happens is as a society, we progress, and things that we used to need, we don't need them in the same way in this new revolution.
Yeah.
That said, it also creates new jobs. When we went from like the 1940s, 50s, where humans were the computer, that was actually a job title, computer. And it's often women who were the computers. They were replaced by, the big IBM machines, which became computers. And then we didn't need the human to be the computer anymore, but the human then babysat the computer to get the computer to do more things than the human as the human computer could have ever done with their brain power. And so we will see that shift again. And I think what we're seeing is already the emergence of new ways of working. I heard a great term the other day called bot sitting, which is basically, and this was an equation executive from Alibaba said when I was in China, efficiency is now human power times number of agents managed equals output. And so this idea of bot sitting, which I do it a lot because I use AI a lot, I'm constantly managing agents doing things. So I've probably got about 6 different agents doing different things and if you think about them like spinning a plate. I've got them all, the plates are all spinning up there, and I just thought, okay, that one's got to the end of its turn. I'll spin that plate with the next thing that I want it to do. Some plates can spin longer without me intervening when you give it a goal, and then it'll be able to take a long-running task and keep on trying to do the task until it's done. But there is now a genuine new way of working where we are going to be orchestrators of AI agents that do tasks on our behalves as we instruct them. I work more rather than less now that I have AI as an enabling technology. As I said, like I was the sad person sitting there thinking of what else I could get Fable to do. It got taken away. But I know that there's people who are working like 18 hours a day just because let's just do one more turn. Just one more prompt. One more thing. I almost got it. And so there is people who are actually working more rather than less. What I think the conversation is about is being intentional and being inclusive and making sure that everybody gets to benefit from this in one shape or form, not that we have a bunch of people who are able to figure it out and move into this new incarnation of what our economy, our intelligent layered economy looks like, and leaves, others behind. I think as a society, we get judged by, history will judge us by our actions. So we need to go, all right, well, what about the people who are operating in the informal economy in the African continent or in Southeast Asia, the people who don't participate in the digital economy right now, even at all, let alone in AI? That said, on the African continent, we've just seen M-Pesa, which is one of their apps for payment, going out there with USDC-backed stablecoin as one of the currencies that's available to it. And I'd say that will be the first place that most people on the African continent will interact with an AI agent. So they're going to leapfrog.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Katja, that feels like a perfect place to end it. Like the positivity. I have to say, I love when you talk about the Fable model. I can see the genuine excitement in your eyes and the verging on disappointment if it gets taken away. But it's brilliant.
It's going to be taken away in 3 days. I'm already devastated, and I'm trying to think of more things to do with it.
Well, I hope you enjoy your time with it while you have it, and I'm sure hopefully it will come back. But that was fascinating. We've gone on longer than we normally would, but I genuinely really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
My absolute privilege. It's a delight to be on the podcast.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give us a click on the follow button on your chosen podcast platform. We'd also love to hear your views on either future topics or indeed if you've got any thoughts on future guests that we should look to get onto the podcast. Thanks again. See you next time.